Its warm emerald green waters of the Indian Ocean are inviting. Whether it's any sea sport, sailing, kiting, surfing, deep sea diving, or simply taking a boat ride, one can even join the local festival. Its natural wonders never stop thrilling. Lying on the deck of one of the luxury beach hotels, one can simply wish their troubles away while sipping on an exotic cocktail. Otherwise, one can enjoy breakfast in the wild, or a cup of tea in a tea plantation. Further inland, one can go river rafting, bungee jumping, or mountain climbing. It's all a matter of choice for the thrill seekers in Kenya. Kenya's cultural heritage never ceases to amaze, excite, and get one carried away. Kenyan athletes train in the highlands west of Nairobi. These highlands were created to bring out the best stamina and endurance that would win medals, break records, and delight the world. Kenyan coffee is the fourth leading foreign exchange earner after tourism, tea, and horticulture. The Kenyan coffee brand is famous world over for its flavor and pleasant aroma due to the rich, fertile soils it's grown in the heights. It is estimated that 160,000 hectares are under coffee. It is also estimated 6 million Kenyans are employed directly or indirectly in the coffee industry. Tea is a major cash crop that is grown in Kenya. It is the leading foreign exchange earner and ranked first before China and India in tea production. Small-scale farmers produce 60% of the tea and are managed by the Kenya Tea Development Agency through 66 factories that serve 500,000 farmers.
This is part of the emerging market for the country, and we are currently trading positively with Kazakhstan, for example, which
of Kenya's Vision 2030. First phase linking Mombasa Port and Nairobi is set to transform both passenger travel and goods movement from the port of Mombasa. The port of Mombasa GR couldn't have been completed at a better time in accelerating movement of goods into the hinterland and decongesting road transport. 600 kilometers of tracks have been laid, 79 bridges installed and tested. 460 kilometers east of the capital is the Lamu Port South Sudan-Ethiopia Transport Project, otherwise known as LAPSET. It's aimed to cut down over-dependence on Kenya's main port of Mombasa, as well as open up Kenya's largely underdeveloped northern frontier through the creation of a second transport corridor. This project will open up northern Kenya as well as East Africa with the rest of West Africa. As part of this project is a crude oil pipeline that will link Lamu to Uganda and southern Sudan. The road network will mirror the pipeline but also include Ethiopia. The provision of extra airport facilities will strengthen the build-up of air transport and logistics along the corridor. 3 resort cities will be developed in Lamu, Isiolo, and Lokichogio on the shores of Lake Turkana under public-private partnership. 700 kilometers north of Nairobi is the largest single private investment in Kenya's history. Sitting on 40,000 acres is the Lake Turkana wind power project that is impacting the lives of the rural community in Loyangalani district, Marsabit County. It's providing health facilities, education, water, jobs, and opening up accessibility through an all-weather road infrastructure. This location is one of the windiest in the country. On completion, the Lake Turkana Wind Project will successfully feature 365 wind turbines that will contribute 310 megawatts of power onto the national grid. The project will cost an estimated $680 million US dollars, and this includes the cost of 400 kilometers of transmission line from Lake Turkana to Suswa substation near Nairobi. The quest for cheaper natural sources of power is going full steam ahead in Kenya. In the Rift Valley around Lake Bogoria, the valley is dotted with natural hot springs and steam fields. Geoscientists estimate that approximately 10,000 megawatts are awaiting to be tapped. This source of power is cheaper, cleaner, and available all year round. It is unexploited and abundant in Kenya's Rift Valley. Olkaria 4 is a geothermal plant that was commissioned in
Good morning once again, ladies and gentlemen. Can I ask that we please settle down, take your seats? We are about to get started. If everybody could come back into the hall, thank you very much. Can I encourage you to come forward? From row 4, there are still many empty seats, and those are not reserved. And you'll make it easier for those who come later to occupy seats. So if you're seated at the back, please do consider moving forward. Thank you very much.
Australia and the USA. Indeed, over Valentine's Day alone, more than 5.2 million stems of red roses have been exported. This sector employs 100,000 people, impacting the lives of over 600,000 by injecting an excess of $20,000 US into their livelihoods. 64 kilometers south of Nairobi is the plains of Makueni County. The government of Kenya is planning a technological hub, Konza Technology City, dubbed where African Silicon Valley begins. It's a key driver of Kenya's development plan, Vision 2030. Konza City is a world-class technology hub, designed as a smart city to feature a regional innovation hub, a high-quality technology university, smart schools, research labs, recreational facilities, hotels and convention centers, smart traffic, smart parking, smart governance, and world-class infrastructure. Konza City is designed to provide a good innovation ecosystem to educate new and exciting tech entrepreneurs entering Africa to consider setting up here. This will create an innovation ecosystem with a global impact.
Consider Kenya as choice number one. I have said right now, East Africa community is one of the most advanced regional economic groupings. We have gone through a customs union. We are now operationalizing a common market. We are even thinking of a monetary union. And apart from that also, we have now efforts to bring together Southern Africa Development Community, which is SADC, together with common market for Eastern and Southern Africa and East Africa together into one free trade area. That will create a block of 26 countries, we being a free trade area. And also at the continental level, we are making a lot of efforts to create one free trade area for Africa. And so the gateway to East Africa, the gateway to the 26 countries in SADC, EAC and COMESA.
Ladies and gentlemen, please do come into the room. For those at the door, please do come right in and take your seats. We'll be getting started very shortly. Please make your way inside and take your seats. Thank you very much.
The State Department of Trade is mandated to manage Kenya's international trade relations, promote and protect its interest overseas, to contribute to the country's development plans, including the Kenya Vision 2030.
We would like to see greater trade taking place in areas where Kenya has a comparative advantage, especially in agriculture, where we believe our agricultural products, our tea, our coffee, our dairy sector, these are areas where we believe we could do a lot more trade, and we need to ensure that we facilitate our businessmen and women to expand and to explore their ability to trade with one another in these areas.
We must make it easy for people to see Kenya as the best investment destination in Africa.
One of the key priorities of the State Department of Trade is to develop the national trade policy. And this has been done and approved by Cabinet. In this national trade policy, we are focusing on domestic trade and international trade. In the domestic trade, we are looking at about 5 key issues that are key or critical to ensure that the domestic trade sector does well. One of them is to ensure that we develop a legal and regulatory framework for both the retail sector, for the wholesale and distribution trade sector, and even for informal trade.
The State Department is hosting a 3-day trade week themed Transforming Kenya into a Competitive, Export-Led and Efficient Domestic Economy, to showcase the development so far achieved by the country in matters trade. The National Trade Policy received Cabinet approval in December 2016 and is geared towards streamlining the local and international trade.
We want to create an orderly market, especially within the retail sector, wholesale and retail sector, and even informal markets. Because there are many markets that are operating in an informal way, but they are not regulated.
It complements the vision and is intended to transform the economy from a supply-constrained outfit responsive to enhanced domestic integration and wider participation in the global economy for national and international trade expansion. The Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives prepared draft laws for the establishment of a commodities exchange on agreement with other East African countries. Within the region, Ethiopia and Rwanda have already established such markets.
And then we do what we call interconnection. We interconnect them so that we have a regional platform. So if you are trading in Kenya, you can trade also in the rest of East Africa.
COMEX is really the missing link that brings together all the stakeholders, all the players in a centralized, structured system. Through the commodities exchange, professionals are brought on board. So you have warehousing that is managed by certified collateral managers who basically give the guarantee and assurance of the product that is in the warehouse.
The draft laws, which include several amendments to the Capital Markets Authorities Act and a set of standards to guide the exchange, are currently in place. So far, the ministry has already developed standards in conjunction with the Kenya Bureau of Standards for 6 commodities and are working on the rest. The Ministry of Agriculture's warehouse receipt bill has been tabled in the Senate, which is a prerequisite to commodities exchange, and at the same time, the Kenya National Trading Corporation, or KNTC, has been revived to manage the warehouses.
Kenya National Trading Corporation
intends to participate in the development of commodity exchange in Kenya through warehousing and contracted management services. We foresee the future of economic development in this country through commodity exchange.
COMEX being a fair player who does not have a direct interest in the trading, but ensures that the traders get what is due to them, the farmers get what is due to them, and at the right price, at the right time, at the right quality.
Kenya's huge agricultural base places it in a prime position to launch and run a successful commodities exchange market. Such a market would save farmers from low prices offered by speculative middlemen. The Kenya Commodity Exchange, COMEX, is being developed as a world-class exchange with global learning.
Commodity exchange si lazima niuze mahindi yangu wakati nimevuna. Tukikuwa sasa kama wakulima wa sowing maten, tusanye mahindi yetu yote na tuweze kulete kwa warehouse. Tunaweza kuuza tukiwa kama kikundi na tuweze kupata faida ama manufaa sana kwa ajili ya hiyo mahindi yetu.
Ni intervention ambaye inakuja katikati ya mkulima na muuzaji kutafutia market na pia ku-encourage mkulima kuhifadhi mavuno yake kwa at.
Commodities exchange is a platform where various commodities and derivatives are traded. Agricultural raw materials like wheat, barley, sugar, maize, and milk are popular products in commodities exchanges. It is a convergence of buyers and sellers with certain rules and conditions that are set to ensure that people are able to sell their commodities in a transparent way and hedging against price volatility.
A commodity exchange is an organized market where farmers will be able to sell their products at better prices.
We are now urging farmers to farm as a business and increase their quality as the coffee sector is concerned.
Wakulima wa kahawa wamenifaidi kwa njia ya kupata pesa mingi ile nafanyia mahitaji yangu ya pesa. Hapo naweza hata mwaka mmoja naweza pata 600,000.
The commodities exchange comes with a variety of benefits to producers as it will help them know when to trade, and the receipts on certificates a producer gets can be used as collateral to borrow funds. Improved infrastructure ensures that value-added produce for prices are appropriate. Trading will be accessed electronically, both locally and internationally, giving traders a wide variety of clients, bringing international business to the local farmer's doorstep. The consumers have not been excluded. They will have access to produce that is free of contamination and also with the correct pricing. For the exporters, they will be able to get enough bulk produce for export in controlled warehouses within their proximity, cutting costs and making them less expensive to aggregate for bulk export. Commodity exchange is a win-win for all. A marketplace giving Kenyans trading space that is regulated for a level playing field.
With the coming of COMEX, we expect to see farmers earning more. We expect to see agricultural sector making a bigger contribution to the economy. GDP increased incomes in everybody's pockets. Lives can be changed. Lives can be assured. And people are able to guarantee their future through COMEX.
Kenya, on the East African coast, is at the heart of Africa. It is known as the cradle.
Ladies and gentlemen, let's give a warm welcome to our chief guest, Cabinet Secretary Peter Munya, as he joins us this morning. Welcome, Buona CS, and to all the team arriving with him as well. They have already toured the exhibition stands. They've seen what's on offer, some of the best of Kenya. And now we are ready to get started. If I could ask everybody please to settle down and take their seats. How are we feeling? I'm excited, and I'll tell you why in a moment. Welcome to Kenya Trade Week. I'm Julie Gishuru. It's a pleasure to be with you all. Just to let you know that we are live on air on several local stations, but we are also live streaming online to the world. The conversations we will have this morning and over the next few days are absolutely critical. And so we are happy to have others join us in this room. Now, as we gather this week with us, water security, affordable housing, healthcare for all, and manufacturing. And so one of the key issues we're looking to focus on, kids, we'll also be looking at fair trade practices. We're also looking into illicit trade. The issue of exports over the next few days is going to be absolutely critical. And we'll be talking about how we can ensure that we grow exports to 25%, by 25% in the medium term. We'll have some exciting things happening here as well. We're going to launch the National Export Development and Promotion Strategy, key document for us all. We're going to launch the National AGOA Strategy, which tells us about opportunities for traders in the US markets. And I'm also particularly excited that we're going to launch the Mark of Identity. Now, this is developed by Brand Kenya, the Brand Kenya board, to identify and position local brands, to incentivize the increased use of local content and the increased consumption of local brands. So I'm excited, but this happens against a bigger backdrop. And that backdrop is the signing of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, which also offers huge opportunities to all of us. And that is, ladies and gentlemen, why I'm excited to be here this morning. But to set the stage for us, to give us more context and skip toll. Let's give
Honorable Peter Munya, Cabinet Secretary for the Ministry of Industry, Trade and Cooperatives, Mr. Gutka Sachen, Chairperson of the Kenya Association of Manufacturers, Bedi, the Chairperson of the Export Promotion Council, Deputy Governors that I see here, all to the first edition of the Kenya Trade Week. And from the feedback we got, it was very successful. Decided that this will be an annual event. So this year's Trade Week begins today and ends on Friday. The key message this year will be on export development and promotion. Underline the word development and promotion. We want to develop more products, markets. We will also, as we trade, we must create an environment of fair trade practices, and we must protect the consumer. There will be a parallel exhibition ongoing throughout the week that will showcase the Made in Kenya products. And the Export Promotion Council in export. Today, and we have run late a bit, we will be discussing on the journey that we have taken to have a national export strategy that will be officially launched tomorrow by His Excellency the President. We will also have an opportunity this afternoon to discuss the second three for Kenya in the United States. Products are being traded, utilizing very little this morning. And on Wednesday, we will be discussing about illicit trade issues we have been dealing with for the past 2 months. Make sure that we fight counterfeits, pirated goods, contraband goods, uncustomed goods, substandard goods, dumped goods, subsidized goods, anything illicit. We will be discussing and want to tell the public about this and to avoid consuming such products. And we are welcoming you to discuss. In the afternoon of Wednesday, we will be discussing about the state of affairs in the retail sector, and we will be hearing on the progress of regulations that will govern the retail sector to avoid the things we have seen in some of the supermarkets that have had challenges in the past. On Thursday, we will have a meeting of regulators on trade facilitation. Any regulator that engages in international trade in one way or the other, we would like them to be on the table with us. We engage and discuss how best their services can be more trade facilitative. We shall also discuss issues of commodity exchange and let you know progress we are making towards establishing a national commodity exchange. We shall end the trade week on Friday with discussions around trade facilitation, ease of competition. Experts will critically examine how these issues are intertwined and how they affect exports and competitiveness of our country as an investment destination. So I end my remarks by saying that we would like to thank some development partners who have supported us, led by the government of the United Kingdom through the Trademark East Africa, who supported us to develop the trade policy, the national trade policy and the export strategy. And we also in coming up with the AGOA strategy through the East Africa Trade and Investment Hub. I wish to recognize all national sponsors and partners that include Export Promotion Council, Anti-Counterfeit Agency, Brand Kenya Board, Council of Governors, among others. I welcome you all to the second edition of the Kenya Trade Week 2018. Go beyond that, and I think you can make your way, Betty Minor. We have to also to be gender sensitive.
Thank you very much. The Honorable Peter Munya, CS for Industry, my colleague, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for showing up at this second edition of the National Trade Week. And I'm glad that it has been decided that it shall be an annual event when we can focus on our exports. We shall be back here at the end of November when we are also focusing on what we make in Kenya during the Industrialization Week and the Made in Kenya Week. And these two events are critical signs and indications of the stuff that we can do to promote production in the country. I think all of us are familiar that the president for his term has chosen to focus on manufacturing among the big four. And it is critical as we focus on that we're looking at how we can expand production, investment, and production in industry in Kenya. But we cannot have production if we don't have possibilities of markets. There's been lots of work done on growing the domestic market, growing the regional market, but we have come to appreciate that the regional market and the domestic market is not going to be enough to spur the level of investment that we require. So such as activity as the National Trade Week helps us to build new markets and focus on expanded markets. I am particularly excited that we'll be launching the export strategy tomorrow. We've all spent some time to focus especially on the manufacturing component of that export strategy. So we are sending the signal to industry that government is focused on growing markets, because that has come back to us that if we don't have the markets, there will be no investment. So as we converse this week and as we converse in November, we certainly want to see when industry speaks, and I'm really talking mostly to Sachin and Tiku and Vimal and others, we would also like to get the signal of what else is required for us to see expanded investment in Kenya by Kenyan firms. Government is focusing on attracting external investment. At the ITMF conference in September next, that's next in September, so in 2 months' time, we expect to see additional receiving some recognizing some additional Chinese investment, I think about 2 billion worth of investment, some deals being signed this Friday. So we're actually seeing external investors. But the focus of government is to ensure that those external investors are partnering and supporting local investors to also expand and get some technological transfer. So we really want to see greater partnership. And if there's anything that you think we can do to expand investment, please let us know. We're open for any dialogue and consultation. Thank you very much, and let's have a great trade week.
Thank you very much, PS Daktari Kipto and Betty, for your contributions. Can I just emphasize what you've heard in terms of the brief of what we are doing this week is highly strategic. What Betty Maina has taken us through is, again, absolutely important. And to all Kenyan businessmen and investors in this room, to many of those who might be watching online or elsewhere, please pay attention. Is all important. The first one, even the best cooking pot will not produce food. Second one, if your cornfield all this, we need to start asking. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm very excited to give a warm welcome to our chief guest. He has just been moved to this docket, so it is a fresh docket. But from observing him, I think he's very comfortable in this docket. And so he comes up to share the keynote address with us this morning. Let's give a
who are present this morning, chief executives from both private and public sectors, development partners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. I am pleased to be with you this morning, which is an important event in our ministry's calendar. This is a forum which affords an opportunity for dialogue on top parallel exhibition showcasing Kenya products made by various industries. In the course of the week, we will be demonstrating to be maintained and expanded to benefit Kenyan manufacturers. My ministry is alive to the competition and the challenges in these markets, and we are prepared to work jointly with the private sector to find appropriate solutions. Ladies and gentlemen, trade operates within a framework of rules and regulations, both at the national and international level. To support the Big Four agenda, my ministry will ensure that fair trade practices and consumer protection remain at the core of every business. 17, and my ministry is in the process of trade organization agreements on anti-dumping, subsidies, and countervailing measures and safeguards to cushion the domestic industry in Kenya against unfair competition from dumping, subsidized front in looking for opportunities that allow the government to address public health concerns in an affordable manner. This has created opportunities for manufacturing of medicine in Kenya that should be exploited under the Big Four agenda to ensure we produce affordable medicines for our needs and for exports to the region and beyond. National agreements that allow our agricultural, industrial, and other products to flourish. At the domestic level, we have undertaken initiatives to promote the consumption of locally produced products under the Buy Kenya, Build Kenya strategy. Our manufacturers in Kenya have done a lot to improve their manufacturing practices to produce goods that meet international standards, and we are making progress in enlightening Kenyan consumers on the economic value. Buying Kenyan-made products will provide the necessary commercial flexibility for local industries to enhance production capacities that will create additional jobs locally, support livelihoods for the rest of society. Therefore, I want to take this opportunity again once more to welcome you home to the Kenya Trade Week 2018. And I assure you, all the stakeholders who are gathered here, that government is doing everything and focusing on making sure that an enabling environment is maintained for traders, for industry, for manufacturers, as we focus on creating the right environment to implement the Big Four agenda. Therefore, my ministry, which is at the center of it, is going to play its role effectively. And indeed, this Trade Week is a milestone for us that looks at the challenges that has been making us not to be competitive in the world market, and scientifically generated strategy that looks at all the bottlenecks, looks at all solutions, and develops a roadmap that will take us where we want to go in terms of trade. And there is no, there is no need to looking at our traditional export markets. We've not been gaining. Then we have also been, of course, not giving a lot of support to our local industries to be able to grow, and therefore that market is being taken by a lot of imports from particular countries. And we have therefore developed a strategy on how to deal with that. And therefore our work as government is to make sure that we implement this strategy while working very closely with you, the private sector. Part of the bylaws, you are focusing on what you do and you don't realize what you do. So as government, again, we want to assure you that we are going with us, traders. Sometimes are playing more facilitative than they have been in the past, so that we are able to achieve this strategy. Indeed, our target is very high, reaching a GDP of 15% by one sector. Manufacturing sector is not an easy task, but I'm sure within this meeting, all the ideas are here, all the technical skills that we require are here. All that is required is all of us to focus in the implementation and work together towards that goal, and I'm sure we are going to reach there. So we therefore, as government, want to call upon you to work closely with us, and we want to assure you of our support and commitment in reaching these goals, because government won't do it alone. In fact, the government's role is more facilitative. The bigger work is for you, industry, trade, traders, manufacturers. That is where the bigger work is supposed to be. Yes, the day-to-day ones, the long-term ones that have been there, deal with the challenges of the enablers. We know them, we know some of the enablers that have not been working, that have been making it very difficult for industry to perform. We deal with that, and then we are able to move on. So thank you very much. God bless you. Let us all have a very good trade week.
Asante sana, commitments there made by the Cabinet Secretary. We do consume our local products, on regulatory institutions being facilitators rather than a hindrance and more. So thank you for that. But can I ask that we do something for a moment? Could you just ask yourself this morning, how much of what you consumed today was made in Kenya or is a Kenyan brand? I see some smiling. Is that a guilty smile, a happy smile? For the gentlemen, how many of you are wearing, many of us women are wearing Kenyan, made in Kenyan brands, and I see it. Yes, the Principal Secretary is one of them. I am. How many men are wearing made in Kenya suits, but must you wear a suit? Are we not African? What did you have for breakfast this morning? Maybe one day we can ask ourselves, what are we driving to work? How many of the cars that we're driving to work were made here? And if we are preaching to others to consume, must we not be the first who consume? And with that, I take us to the next session. We're going into the details now. And so we're going into a presentation session that's going to be led by Bernard Kagira. He is a consultant from Integrated Development Consultants. And he's going to take us through the journey of the National Export Development Strategy. Let's give him a welcome as he comes up, please.
Good morning. I'm delighted this morning to walk you through the Integrated National Export Development and Promotion Strategy, which, as the minister mentioned, a lot of science was applied in developing this strategy. And I am glad to walk you through it. I will request, yeah, I think you all can see, yeah. So if I could start rolling you through the strategy, the context of the strategy is traced to Kenya's policy shift way back in mid-1980s, where the country shifted to look at or to base economic growth on export-led strategies. And with that, the controls that were there were removed as the government embraced more liberal trade. And this strategy was informed by what is now acknowledged world over, that exports can indeed transform an economy. The experience of countries like South Korea, Taiwan, and many others have demonstrated that if you plan on how export can stimulate economic development, this is the reality that this strategy is alive to. The government is committed to this because in Vision 2030, you see trade being given a very central role. Besides the government has actually gone beyond pronouncement of this policy in Vision 2030 and committed to opening up markets. And as you can see in the slide that is before you, we have got substantial market opening initiatives that the government has pursued since 2000. The first being the WTO. Kenya is very active there. COMESA, all the way up to the latest initiative in Africa, which we are calling the Game Changer. That is the Continental Free Trade Area. The effect of this, as you can see, is to open up Kenyan market to very lucrative markets out there, both in the regional, in the continent, and globally. What we have tried to show there are the market sizes and the power of the market. Market size is given in form of population, and the market power is economic strength of these markets. What is important to note is that all these markets that we have shown here, Kenyan goods can get in there on duty-free basis, bulk of them. And therefore, that just gives you the scope that we have as a country to get our goods out there as we plan for exports to transform this economy. Now, the chart that you see here does show that although we have had this huge market opening by the government, the utilization of these opportunities have not been good at all. And you can see that because the growth of exports year on year has not been sustainable. Actually, you'll note that the years that our exports on annual basis grew at the highest was 2008 and 2011, where we achieved 26% and 25%. But thereafter, you can see that our exports have done very badly. This is data according to the economic survey. And this is what is causing the government and the private sector and everybody to wake up, because it doesn't resonate the story of how exports can drive the economic development. The reason for this, because I know this is at the back of your minds after seeing that chart, is narrow destination market. We as a country have not been able to diversify our market destination, meaning that we have stuck to traditional markets throughout. Right now, out of a possible 60 countries that we can export goods on duty-free basis, we are only exporting 70% of our exports are going to 13 countries. And that is not acceptable in a situation where we have got such a huge landscape of where to export goods. The other one is narrow export product base. We've got very few products that we are exporting. With 5 broad categories, actually a very weakened economy. Because the chart you see there is that we have sustained our imports, while our exports have more or less stagnated. Now, from a trade perspective, as you consume imports, you're supposed to plan to export more so that your import bill is paid by foreign exchange that you earn through exports. The situation we have here is that we are financing our imports, not from our exports, but from the hard labor that we do and generate other consumables. But we are not pushing these products into the regional and global market. And therefore, in formulating, the other thing that you also see is that our situation does not reflect what is happening in the world. Because exports as a percent of gross domestic product in the world economy, this is a chart from one of the World Bank reports, has been growing. In fact, for the period that we are reviewing, you can see the world really, world economy was being transformed by exports. But for Kenya, it was very different. And you're able to appreciate that if you recall the chart that I showed you earlier. And therefore, the aim of this strategy is to transform the economy through export-led focus. And the key objective is to try and link our productive sectors to the destination markets. That is what the strategy is focusing on, without going to so many details. Meaning that for every market where we have export opportunity, we must come back here and find out which products can we export out there. And we start working backwards to make sure that as a country, we are able to produce what is required in the destination markets out there. The strategy covers the sectors that are listed there. Of course, the big 4 are sectors, that is agriculture and manufacturing sector. You can see they're featuring here. But it goes beyond that because we've got so many other products that we could export, fisheries, handicraft, and so on and so forth. Actually, if you are able to make an impact on these sectors, then as a country, we'll be able to achieve what I will show you shortly. But I would like to really point out here from a methodology point of view, and this is where science comes in. We asked ourselves, how do we, if I could take you back to this chart, we asked ourselves, what should be the goal of export strategy? The goal of export strategy should be try to bridge the gap between imports and exports. And to do that, that obligation is assigned to these sectors. Each of these sectors were consulted. They gave input and they gave commitment on growing exports so that as a country, in 5 years' time, we will not have a chart like the one I have shown of a huge balance of trade deficit. The approach that was used is as indicated here. We had sector working groups led by directors at ministry level, PSS, and from the private sector, an engaged session from February last year all the way up to February this year, meaning that the strategy has benefited a lot from all that has been ongoing. In terms of targeting, and now we come to numbers, what will deliver the export growth? First, the target that we are looking for is 25% growth per year. And here we are targeting to grow exports from what it was in 2017, 575. And by the way, that figure 575 was before Economic Survey 2018 was released. We noted that it's now 594, which is good message for purposes of export development. But exports must grow to 1.8 trillion exports on average between 2018 and 2022 by 25%. The question is that possible? And the answer is yes, because if you look at the performance in 2007 and 2011, we were able to post 25% and 16 and 26%. So with clear focus, it's possible. Where soul searching was done, and every sector pronounced the growth rate that they think they can attain. And I'll walk you through now manufacturing sector, the various sectors. This is manufacturing sector, and it's good the chair of KM is here. Before we, this particular chart was developed to align the prospects for manufactured exports to the ambitions that are there in the Big Four pillar, industrial development. Billion in 2017 to 1.2 trillion in 2022. That will be driven by all the activities that are happening in industrial transformation through the Big Four pillar, with export strategy providing markets for these particular products. In our computation of these, we base this on historical reality that Kenya is able to export, to absorb about 40%. Still, you'll have over 50% of output from our industries that will need to go to the export market. And the strategy has taken care of that because, as you can see there, the drivers of the manufacturing sector export growth will be value addition, enterprise development, where MSCs are supposed to play a key role, but most important, export promotion, so that goods that are coming out of our industrial activities get into the destination markets. And then you come to agricultural products. And the agricultural products, we have listed the products that will drive export growth. The sector is expected a target that all the key players evaluated and determined it's possible, starting with tea, going to coffee, all through to all the products listed there. And it is expected that by 2022, we shall have grown our exports to the level that is indicated in that chart. And then we come to fisheries. By 2016, exports of fisheries had gone to the floor level. And what the strategy is doing is just trying to push the sector to go to the levels of our exports in 2012 and just overshoot it a bit. And to do that, fisheries exports must grow at a rate of 29% per year on average between 2018 and 2022. This will be driven by aquaculture and other initiatives within the fisheries sector. And let me say this, that what this strategy is doing is that whatever is happening in fisheries sector today, we must be very conscious that every year fisheries sector must contribute to the envisaged growth of national exports. The experience in the livestock sector, dairy, has more or less been like that one of fish. Again, a situation where our exports have just been plummeting. And reason for plummetion is known, only that it has not been planned for purposes of being addressed from an export growth point of view. Now, there is opportunity for this to be done. One, because Kenya has got very high value dairy products with very high demand in the regional market. But as you shall see shortly, we are barely scratching the regional market. And so the strategy is assigning dairy products to grow at the indicated rate of, I think, about 25% per year. And if the dairy sector does that, then we'll be able to reclaim our position of exports that we were doing in 2012. We come to meat. Meat is the other product within the livestock sector that is being focused by the strategy. Meat, for some reason, unlike other products, has been doing well, but it could do better. This has been driven mainly by our exports of meat products, mainly to enhance exports of meat. It is expected that meat sector will grow at 25%, aligned to the national target of 25%. And the meat industry actually say this is achievable and assigned themselves task of doing that as is detailed in the strategy. The other sector product is honey. Honey also has been performing very badly. It was picked as a focused product because of the potential that the country has. And you can see that from the performance in 2012, 2013. So it's like there's something that has happened between 2012 through to 2017 that must be reversed through this strategy. One of them, of course, is very weak value chain within the honey standard. These are issues that will need to be addressed through this strategy. And then we come to the mining sector. Mining sector has a huge potential that the mining department has identified and noted that it's possible to exploit and have mining mineral exports grow by 25%. For petroleum, the ambition is a bit low for all that we know, but it is expected that within this period, the petroleum sector will contribute to an average growth of 4% of the of the national exports. The next one is exports of handicraft. Again, we also have a task here, and we do have a big market out there to try to take advantage. Our current exports on average of about 321 million. And this is a story for all the products, or rather for all the sectors, subsectors that we have covered under the manufacturing sector. The global and regional market, where we did a scan to determine what market size is available there and what volume of that. To drive financing to support export from about the current level to about 1.3 trillion by the end of 2022. And this is seen as very important because international best practice that we looked at did indicate that unless there is this concerted support from banking sector, then we may not be able to realize the objective for which we are trying to do. Presentation where it's being between the foreign and what we are, there is very clear proposals of what needs to be done to strengthen foreign market representation. The other one is on trade facilitation. Again, building on Kenya's signing of trade facilitation agreement, the strategy recognizes need to actually implement that agreement, because by so doing, then we are going to make it much easier for us to get our exports out of these countries to the destination market. Then we have export promotion, which has been very, very weak and very underfunded. And the strategy has recognized that and made very clear proposals on what needs to be done. Because unless you promote your exports, then you'll produce, and it will be very hard for your goods to get out, to be promoted, including strengthening of the Export Promotion Council so that it has got muscle equivalent to what is expected by the strategy. Quickly, I'll just walk through trade in services by just indicating that besides goods, which we have covered, we do have a huge potential when it comes to trade in services. And the first area where the strategy has recognized are the actually articulated interventions that needs to be pursued is business services, where you have all our professionals, from doctors all through. And this is an area that Kenya has not properly exploited purely because we don't have a policy on how to export professional services. So whoever is going out there and providing the services, they do it more from their own effort rather than a conscious government and private sector, policy on how to target growth of professional services, including training, because it's at this point that you can be able to train for specific markets. Because if you do that, then you become an answer to the highly demanded professions out there. And by exporting these services, then we also enhance our export earnings. The other one is health services. And again, the drivers of export development during this phase, which Ministry of Health and Tourism have recognized, is this issue of specialized treatment, including medical tourism. That is being used by many other countries that we have reviewed and determined that if you're able to specialize or to have specialized health facilities, then you'll be able to do very well. I think as I conclude, we have financial services, where also we've got a huge opportunity, and recreation and sports. I think I would like to end by just indicating that the strategy has got an overall budget which is attached to the document. I don't want to go into details of it, but just to say that we've got an accountability institutional framework where that brings every institution and agency in the country together so that is at sector working group level, led by specific ministry and county government institutions, and reporting to the highest level. Thanks.
Going through those numbers. You feel energized. I'm glad you feel energized. Do you mean because there's a lot of work to do? We can shift this. We can and we must. And I'm going to welcome now our panelists to come and we address these issues. Let's give a warm welcome to the Chairman of the Brand Kenya Board, of Equity Bank, Vasha. Also with us on the panel, banking of KCB on the panel as well. Thank you. You can give them all a round of applause. I will just point out that this is not a gender-sensitive panel, although I am here. Tito is representing Mimi Africa, but has a rich background in history. But I will represent women on this panel, but I'm here with us now. Order, can I ask? We've heard the numbers, and I'm not going to belabor the point. We have a problem when it comes to exports. I will start, I think, yet we are only achieving it in certain sectors. What perhaps...
Golden goose for Kenya. And everybody's talked about horticultural exports. In all our export promotion policies that have been developed in the last 30 years, agriculture has received a little bit of mention, but whether it's the current policies, etc., we haven't really captured the essence of what horticulture is. Remember, 3 million farmers, the biggest employing sector in the country, is behind horticulture, but we haven't given it the respect it needs. Traditionally, horticulture has worked because we didn't have constructive, restrictive policies that were pre-independence. Horticulture developed after independence, and we carried on working very well. There's no new investment going in, and there's a number of reasons why. Obviously, competition from other countries. That's number one. Number two, our costs of production have really gone up. Everything from labor, our minimum wages compared to Ethiopia or Egypt are 3 times as high. Power costs.
Yeah.
You know, so we don't take pride, we don't support, we don't go out together. So the private sector ran this industry for 40, 50 years. It's run out of energy. When you start exporting containers to China of avocados, for example, those avocados will take 40 days and you'll get paid at 90 days. Who is going to fund that cash flow? So we need to work on plant passports so that the products can move out. We need to move on people visas so that Kenyans can travel. We are really restricted from going to new markets because we have to line up for visas. That doesn't work. Number 3, financing. And then number 4, we have to work with KEFIS and Ministry of Finance and Trade. And then we go. For me,
thank you.
The figures that were here, very easy to achieve if we go together.
Thank you so much for that. You know, I love your insights, short and sharp and very clear. But I heard the red flag there. Because what Tiku is saying is it's been good, but we are facing problems. And so if we don't address the right things now, we're going to see a shift. James, let me come to you next. And the best practices we must adopt in order to achieve the vision that we have.
Thank you very much. I think the first thing that one observes is the contradiction between when you look at the global competitiveness. In terms of innovation, Kenya is ranked 4th in Africa. When you look in World Economic Forum's global competitiveness, Kenya is ranked in terms of innovation 37th, best in the world. And business sophistication, 47th. And the question is, if we are that globally competitive, why is it not being reflected the complete policy gaps. The private sector is competitive, but is not able to take the market. The second one is the question of whether there are challenges with the focus. Are we really focusing on the right thing? If you look at, and we are shown the graph, the top 5, that doesn't speak to a diversified economy. So we are always often vulnerable to shocks. Then you look at the countries that we export to, about the top 5 countries, Pakistan, Uganda, United States, Netherlands, and UK, constitute about 60%. Again, it's not a diversified export market. But really what then most interesting is that we seem to be export-oriented, we don't process. So there's no value, significant value in our product. It's volume. If you look at the success of the finance sector in the region, Kenya is a hub for financial services. Kenya can become a major hub of exporting healthy services. Kenya can really be a big exporter in terms of education services. These are soft power exports where Kenya has a competitive advantage because they are regional exports. But let me close by saying I'm very encouraged because when you look at the big 4 and tying them to the export agenda, I see that value addition can significantly increase the value of our export. The same commodities, but maybe increase value 10 times because of processing. The second one, health. I see health tourism. We can compete with India if we really sort that out. Because initially we have a domestic market. Most of our people. Let's look at gaps on policies. Let's look at the financial sector. The biggest gap is interest capping. It's a poor policy. It's not a promotional policy. It's a contractive policy. Let's look at agriculture. Incentives to manufacturing our agricultural produce or value addition. Why don't we give incentives? Because we'll gain 10 times the value and taxes will go up 10 times. So if we give incentives, it will be a closed loop in terms of, and there are many like that.
Thank you.
And then lastly, is lack of coherence. But let me give government credit that the 4 agenda is a very coherent, integrated approach. The question is, can we sustain the pressure? It has been done very well in the budget. About 1.4 trillion of the budget has been dedicated to the big 4. If we sustain that for 5 years, that strategy will see us through.
Thank you so much. So I come now to Linus Gita here. You have just taken the reins as chairman of the Brand Kenya board, but you have a history of GlaxoSmithKline. You've been in the media, Nation Media Group. You've been in manufacturing. I will pass mine to you in a moment. Maybe Linus, with your rich experience in different sectors, looking at the challenge that we have now and the gap we need to close, what's top of mind for you? What must we do now?
Thank you very much, Julie. I am, like Julie says, I've just been named an executive chairman of Brand Kenya. I think it's about a week. But I have good news in terms of this panel, that Julie is actually a direct good place. Consumer healthcare in Nairobi in 2001, 2002. I remember going to the then Ministry of Finance because we had a world-class factory, not going to be competitive. And the reason we're not being competitive is because when you are making drugs, and I'm just using this as an example, actually to support the point that James was making. When you are making drugs, if you are having the cartons or the bottles or the other different ingredients, those are those different ingredients and they fall under different categorization. And so you pay tax on those things. And then you end up putting them together and you have it. And therefore, right there was a discrepancy. And the point I'm making here is that, and I think this is what even probably the Big Four is about, we need to have a holistic approach. I think one of the biggest challenges I see is when ministries do this, and the other ministry does that, and the other ministry, and then we do not all bring it together and say, this is about Kenyan competitiveness. I don't care whether you are in industrialization. I don't care whether you are in trade. I don't care whether you are in the other different department. But for Kenya to be competitive, we need to have a wholesome approach. Now, the story doesn't end there. I then went to Nigeria, and I was the CEO of the same company, GlaxoSmithKline. Did exactly that. He got all the ministry together, I think on my third week, and said, if this is something we can do in Nigeria, I want to be told, because we are going to do duties in some cases. I set my agenda for the next 3 years of building a toothpaste plant. Remember, we had just closed a factory here. It went to Egypt. I see now it is probably coming back. But it went, Calpol, Actifed, all those things went to Egypt. And I go to Nigeria, and this agenda, I've just closed a factory to go to expand the factory on the other side. The difference for me was we were not coordinated in Kenya. We did not have a holistic approach to competitiveness. And I think if there's one thing that we need to really think about is that holistic approach. Because I think manufacturers here will talk about, yeah, we are doing this with the Ministry of Trade. But Nairobi County government, cannot do this or that. We are doing this, but the other department in terms of licensing, doesn't seem to be aware. So maybe a holistic approach is one of the things that we need to think about. The other thing is, we need to really think, if we are going to talk about Kenya and Kenyan brands, we need to also aggressively support the cottage industry. I think there are lots, and I saw quite a number of them out there. Cottage industry, made in Kenya stuff, where we are actually competitive. Because, for instance, why are we exporting hides and skins instead of exporting shoes, instead of exporting bags that are actually being made out there? What can we do to those fellows who are, working out there to actually make it a bigger industry? Because, our cows are not any less expensive, or our hides are not any less expensive than the ones in Tanzania or Ethiopia. We can be competitive. So for me, the second thing, and I finish, is identifying those industries where we can be globally competitive, and then investing our resources behind them. We should not be exporting raw coffee, tea, hides and skins if we are talking about industrialization. We should be talking about how we add value, because we know we are going to be competitive. Nobody can beat us. Pyrethrum and making insecticides, nobody can beat us. So we need to narrow and identify those things and really do a good job. And this deficit will be closed in less time than is even projected. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. And I'm the traders. And you just look at the furniture they're producing and the vibrance and resilience. And if we can just support these people, how do we bank? Obviously, we must do.
Thanks, Julie. Challenges in collaboration. Manufacturers, until engaging, is communication that should take us to the next forward. To take us forward, sorry. My next point is from the regional perspective that you mentioned. We have where you start to develop slowly from the cottage industries and we patency and keeping for us and that foundation.
Thank you very much. There's an incredible amount of capacity building we'll talk as we go on that needs to be done in terms of innovation.
Which may or may, whether that is in Latin America or Europe or Africa or the Middle East. Now, what I'd say is it's music and coordination, because branding, building of preference is really at the core of everything we do, and certainly at the core of national branding, sector branding, and even product branding. And when we talk about implementation, it's about what's our story. It's about value addition. And most importantly, it's about consistency. If we are telling different story that's being told, which story, and so on and so forth, and fellow panelists, and certainly by the lead it into one strong national.
Kenya Trade Week is a fantastic idea. I think it's important, it's the right time, because we've got everything ready for us. Kenya Trade Week, I think what the minister just announced and talked about means no action. We've got a poll, thanks to all the banks, business unusual. It will have to be complete with me. These manufacturing, local value addition, food and nutrition, whether you talk about the entire value chain, we can get these bankers to say, again, 20 bank, let's develop all the rest. It's going to take us another 5-6 years to develop all that, bring it up. Why not use the current banking system? So that vis-a-vis now, why? Because therefore, it has got no incentives for exports. The taxes that are charged and all that stuff, you can't have subsidy. How can you survive? So I'm just saying, this is where government really needs to put that act together and say, we are going to be them. At the bottom was, in 2007, we had, I would not like us to miss that anymore. I think we started.
Marketing committee at Brand Kenya board.
Are now promoting and supporting Made in Kenya with pride, and also to ensure that more stakeholder engagement with Kenyan brands. So with these, really our strategy here, the great leaders speaking here, the CS has spoken, the PS has spoken, we have a great future with positioning Kenya with a mark of identity in all the communications, in all our websites, to ensure that we are one Kenya, one country, and a great, great nation of great brands. Thank you.
Spoken a little bit about the mark of identity. As you go forward, both in your role as chair of BKB, but also in your other roles, what are you focusing on? Who are this happen?
About charity begins at home. We must, first of all, be consumers of the billion deficit. And for me, this is the most important thing, is we must drive costs out of our businesses. Because the Tanzanians are not sleeping. The Chinese products are cheaper. So we must engage amongst ourselves and remove those costs, because there's no other way we are going to be competitive. If the water that I bring, from as far as Indonesia, and it comes here competitively, how can we not do that? Right. How can we not be competitive? So we must, for us to push that brand, we must push a competitive brand. And one key way is ensuring that unnecessary costs that go into making that brand, and by brand I even talk about services, right, is how we remove unnecessary costs that make us less competitive. That is what we shall be engaging on.
Thank you for that. And I think this was very important, because it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's our athletes, whether it's our banking, our financial services, whether it's our products, our flowers, our coffee. Tiku, let me come to you next. In terms of action, here at Kenya Week, which stakeholders do you hope to be seated with at your table, and what do you hope to be taking forward?
I think 3 key segments of how we're going to achieve what we want to achieve. And we have a very clear strategy, and we're working on it already. First, we need to work with government and Ministry of Trade. We need the Ministry of Finance. We need KEFIS. We need HCD. And we need the private sector. So that's the top end, and that's to facilitate market access. And we come to, I don't want to say the bottom of the chain, but I'm going to say every single producer in this country, whether you're doing textiles or you're doing bottled water, to be able to get this message across about, it'll be branding, so that we have Blue Mountain coffee, we have Jamaican product. You know, it's got to get down to that level, so that people will then, the farmers will then take ownership and pride in that product. If you don't take ownership and pride of your product, you don't have passion in what you're growing, we will not grow horticulture. So this value chain has to go from top market access to farmers, and then we keep missing out a really big part of our workforce, and that's our youth. And this message has to go into youth, because there are no young farmers anymore. Everybody I work with is in their 50s and above. We need it. But the youth can get into, we're talking, so much we can do. So the value addition part comes in, and that's where we now just go for it. It's really as simple as that.
Thank you very much. Can I just say, I do know youth who are down at Mike. Can I just ask, are there any young people in this room who are in agriculture? If there are, would you just please step? I can see a hand over there. Okay, one hand. I see a couple of hands. And I think that's part of the challenge, is how do we support them to grow? I come to you, James. Who is seated at your table right now in terms of action points to ensure that we are growing our exports? who would be seated at your table and what commitments can you make? Thank you.
I think we would start with our research institutions. They must really focus their research on export markets so that they really become the feeder to the exporter, between our exporters and importers. If those linkages are built for them, theirs would then be pure production. I think we need also to build capacity in our SMEs. We should not assume that the export market is the same as domestic market. The requirements, the needs and specifications are different. Giving our SMEs exposure is essential.
Thank you.
And probably add on to what, to reduce the taxes, to facilitate. These are payments that come government by the small and medium enterprises. That gap, I wish that can be corrected so that we can.
Thank you. What are the next steps that are most critical for you?
Engage everybody involved in the demand chain. I think the supply chain is
That area, critical. Vimal, your thoughts?
Data of data. What is that? We actually, right? Number two, we're on the equator. On the equator, you've got certain characteristics which are not available to the north, nor to the south. We have serious competitive advantage. If you talk about mangoes, avocados, we could be the producer for the world. Export, but where do I export? Where do I get the buyer? What's happening there? In terms of value addition, let's put a lot of information down, whichever portal we use, whether it's Kentrade or whatever. Coagulate, put all that thing into exports and say, fine, here we are, we have information. Our biggest problem, even at the farm level, is information dissemination. We do start doing that, we'll have a lot more packaging. Then the EPZs or the SEZs we talk about, agri-business parks. You could actually have a full processing center where all the produce is brought there, made for exports in terms of, call it a cooperative or a company. Everybody comes in and they get value from the end. Same thing could be done with, we've got a fantastic work for Africa. We've got to be prepared for the free trade area. We've already approved it, the cabinet has approved it, it's gone ahead. We are now an open market for anything from the rest of Africa to come in.
Part of it. What do I want? I want to sit with a here. Please come forward. Yes, the lady.
Much. My name is Beatrice Mwasi. A quick comment, and that is on value addition. I think it is time now that we stop talking about the what of value addition into the how of value addition. We need to hatch models. Let's come up with models that are workable, even if it means coming up with one pilot special economic zone. Pilot it, let it work, and let's multiply. It's needless to have 20 or 40 special economic zones that are not functional. Let's just come up with workable models. The second comment that I want to make is, let us bring Made in Kenya from Brand Kenya into the Kenyan society. And what do I mean this? A brand is less of the mark and more of the value proposition. So therefore, for us to be able to set our enterprises, our businesses, to be able to reflect the value that we need to be positioning out there, we need to understand what does it take to be able to fashion brand in Kenya. For that to happen, Brand Kenya, step out of your boardroom into the business sector. Let us understand and let's work this value proposition together. And lastly, I want to appreciate the panelists who actually alluded to the inclusion of the SME dimension into export trade that we saw. From being 80% of economically active population is among SMEs, let's support them so that we can balance our trade. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's give her a round of applause. And yes, our SMEs are SMEs. And can we note we need her on a panel at some point, maybe the next Kenya Trade Week. Please introduce.
Because, and I like what I've heard from the panels here. I have the problem. I was just talking to my partner there about the making us make it. It is you who have to make us make it. In which way? You competitive. They are talking of for you to get paid. Are you going to improve surely? Are you going to move anywhere? You have the people you have to pay, but you have to go for our own. Yet you have supplied something somewhere. You have to go for our own. You have to cater for that one. But you have your money stagnant somewhere. That's all about the government, which should... I'm talking... I will give my real life story. Just for a minute, please, for a minute. I supplied and up to date. I've not going in. to venture
point, and perhaps one a CS and one a PS. The appeal from Kenyan businesses is, can you ensure that if they supply, to pay them within a certain period of time, or there is personal accountability for public officers that fail to do so? Key issue, please, sir.
Thank you very much. My name is Matthew Ashers. I'm the chairman of the Micro and Small Enterprises Federation, which actually points to one thing: open up, become local product. And point that Mr. Through we will create a platform on which all...
Appreciate the presentations, but my question would be, as you promote Brand Kenya, how many of us are wearing a Kenyan product, aside from the bracelets that we buy? So when we say that we are promoting Brand Kenya, it needs to move from principle to practice. With attracting the youth to export competitiveness, I'd like to understand, to what extent are we contributing to the conversation to improving our intellectual property regime? 2015, America made $23 billion to improve.
Consuming, how much of what I'm consuming is patenting. We are in a challenging phase, but it's an exciting time. To those export targets, we have CS here and PS with us. What's your final word?
Just remove the supply constraints so that
Thank you very much, Linus.
Yeah, for me, I'm still quite frankly shocked by the deficit that we have, that we're exporting about 600 billion and we are importing. Anyway, we have a gap of 1 trillion. Now, that should worry everyone. And I think one thing we would see is that we become a very consumer society. So one of the things I would suggest is that in removing some of those taxes from the products and services that we make here to make us more competitive, consider looking at that list of what we are importing and maybe raising your money from there. Thank you very much.
Right, very interesting. Thank you. Musa, please.
Thank you. Thank you. We must believe in ourselves to be able to deliver. Let us collaborate. We've started, we've been doing this, let's keep going on, and we will be able to achieve greater development for the country. Thank you.
Asante sana. Tito?
Mine is to say, it's one thing to say, what clothes are you wearing from Kenya? But nobody is going to wear clothes from Kenya if they're not good enough compared to clothes they can get anywhere else. And that applies across the board. So preference is everything. In everything we do, we've got great plans. Let's build in the quality and the branding so that we...
Thank apparel, which means we send it out and then buy it back as a brand. So therein lies another... Yes, thank you, but Vimal, go ahead.
I think, frankly, we have the problems, we have the solutions. First and foremost is productivity. In companies themselves, all our companies, we've got to look at our productivity, get our productivity per capita really high up there. That's serious potential. Then quality. I think quality is a given. We must maintain our standards. And that's why Kenya is known in markets. I mean, our products may be sometimes high priced, but quality is not a given. Quality is a given. It's not a negotiable item. Third thing is cost. Reduce our costs really dramatically. And I think this is where both in-house and also government needs to work with us and say, fine, these are the impediments in cost, let's look at them. Fourth thing is delivery, D. Delivery on time, in full, error-free. If you get an export order, you've got to make sure we deliver on time, in full, error-free, right? Right now, we get a lot of orders that are shipped out late, reach the markets late. We don't want to have that. And the last thing is, I think, the morale and safety. I think Kenya has got a serious advantage in a lot of areas. We've got standardization. Let's raise our standards for our products, and the buyers out there will buy. Ultimately, I think it's not the Western markets we've been focusing on. Asia and China itself is becoming a seriously good market for good quality products. So we can look at those markets. Logistics is our biggest issue, and this is where our logistics fail us. Everything from the port onwards, if you look at the costs, including air transport, it is a prohibitive. We need to work on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. Let's give them a round of applause, please. Thank you to our panelists. You may take your seats. Thank you for a really enriching discussion. I now move straight to our next session where we're going to be inspired by some success stories and some testimonials. And we're going to start this afternoon, with Jas Betty, Chairman of the Export Promotion Council, to take us through his story, his narrative, his experience, and he will be followed by Perez Ochieng. Let's give Jas a warm welcome as he comes up. Thank you.
None of us are wearing Kenyan clothes, and we actually do not commit ourselves into Buy Kenya, Build Kenya. But like Julie did say, Kenya exports almost $400 million of apparel. Kenya does make Calvin Klein in this country. Kenya does make Tommy Hilfiger in this country. Kenya does make Levi's. Kenya does make Wrangler. I mean, it can't get better than that. So I think maybe you need to tour the country a little bit so you can see what we are doing. Thank you. Anyway, I think I'm supposed to talk about the success stories in this sector, the textile industry, and that's why I mentioned those 4 brands. But more importantly, I think I need to say is that no country in the world has industrialized if it does not embrace the textile industry. So whether you start from the UK in 1900, or you go into Hong Kong, into China, into Taiwan, into Korea, into India, now Bangladesh, Vietnam, they all started with a basic industry called the textile industry. Because this is an industry that didn't need skills. This is an industry that could employ. In 1992, when the Export Promotion Council was formed, our fundamental goal 25 years ago was we need to grow our exports, and what sectors can we go into. So very quickly, we did go into the apparel industry. At that point in time, we had over a ray of hope in 2000 when President Clinton announced the African Growth and Opportunity Act. And Kenya was the first country on, and we started with a very modest export of $30 million in the year 2000, and year on year we were doubling. But still, we were not the #1 exporter to the US. I'm proud to say today, in 2018, Kenya is the #1 exporter to the United States, and we've been there since 2015. Lesotho was ahead of us. And yes, we overtook Lesotho, and today we're about $100 million ahead in exports against Lesotho, Madagascar being #3 and Mauritius being #4. Now, we have a competitive advantage into the US market of duty-free, quota-free market access. The US market size, and I think Vimal talked about it, do we know the size of the pie, and do we know what slice of pie we want? And yes, the slice of the pie, quoting $350 million, hey, come on, guys. 0.35%, and you have a duty-free market access? Is something wrong with us? It's good to clap about it and chest thump that we are the #1 exporter under AGOA. But considering the size of business that we have at our doorstep, where we had 16 to 32% competitive advantage over India, Bangladesh, China, Vietnam, 0.35% is a very, very small number. So I think we really need to do something in this sector. We have 50,000 jobs in this sector, and very, very quickly we can grow it to 1 million jobs. It's not a big discussion. It's just that one word, competitiveness, that we were talking about. And just to give a perspective to this room, Bangladesh, one small country, 120 million people, these guys are exporting $28 billion. And they have got duty into the United States. Into the United States, they're exporting $5 billion. Into Europe, they're exporting $18 billion. It just tells you that what can happen to one industry and one sector if you embrace it right. So we have a serious opportunity, and I was just looking at the 2017 numbers for Kenya. Our #1 export today is tea, 24.5 or 24.8%. #2 is horticulture at 19%. And #3 today is apparel, 5.7%. So our garment industry from nowhere is #3 in Kenya. But surely it can go up to #1, and it can create serious amount of jobs. Because one factory having 4, 5, 10,000 jobs is no big deal in this industry because it's labor intensive. So what have we got as a country? We have the greatest human capacity that is ever available. We have a young, educated population. 70% of our people are under the age of 30, 70% are educated. All of them are looking for jobs, and we have the greatest asset, which is human capital, which we're not utilizing. Our single biggest problem socially also is going to become that same capital if we don't nurture it into good jobs. So we've got this opportunity and the perfect opportunity right now that up to 2025, we have duty-free, quota-free market access to just one market, and we just concentrate on that one market to create 1 million jobs and to do a $10 billion export is not a big thing, because if Bangladesh can do it, so can we. And I think we have a huge opportunity ahead of us. Currently, I'm the president of the International Textile Manufacturers Federation. I've lobbied for the world's biggest textile conference to be held in Kenya, in Nairobi, on the 7th of September. We're going to have over 300 investors in this country, in this city. And Betty Miner talked about it this morning. It's that perfect opportunity for us to showcase Kenya. I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Jazz. Thank you. Very interesting, inspirational, challenging as well. And next, let me welcome Perez Ochien to come up and to share her story. Sakoma Food Innovations is her company, and she's done some incredible things. Let's give her a warm round of applause, please.
Honorable Minister and the CS present this afternoon. Mine is just to share with you the journey that I've taken with developing Kenyan sweet potato market in the UK. I wanted to play a short video for you just to say how aggressive I've been able to pursue this and to be able to stand before you this afternoon to share some of the experiences. And my purpose today is to inspire you and to make you know that it's possible. In your own small, special way, we can open up global markets for some of the Kenyan products. I think we'll play the video after I speak. So what I wanted to share with you, you ready to share? Kenyan sweet potatoes, or sweet potatoes generally, is known as a poor man's food. So my challenge initially was to demonstrate that actually it's not a poor man's food. And when we talk about value addition, it's not just about processing and manufacturing. It's the understanding of the consumer and the global trends. What does the consumer want to hear? How does he want to consume the product? Why is he interested in new products? So part of what I do currently is food innovation and packaging. I'm studying masters in food innovation and packaging, but I'm running my business at the same time. So several challenges that I have to take. So I just want to show you how aggressive we have to be if we are going to get into the global markets and increase our exports. So I just show a 2-minute video, and then I'll take you through the whole process of how we've been able to open up the market for the Kenyan sweet potatoes.
Going to hear from the Chief Executive, Perez Ochien, from the Business Sector. Welcome, Perez. Thank you very much. You don't get extra time for a prop, come on, and in fact the clock's about to start ticking. Right, lovely, there you go. Welcome.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Perez Ochien. I'm from Kenya originally, but I live in UK here, so I'm a diaspora. I'm today here to inspire you, as I have been inspired. Many years ago, I saw that picture when my father-in-law sent me to go and buy sweet potatoes for the family. And the picture that I saw that day, I took it. I didn't save it on my phone or in my computer, but in my heart and in my brain. And so many years have gone, and it has kept me going to be able to stand before you today. This is a picture that I saw of women who produce sweet potatoes in the eastern part of Kenya. And the first thing that struck me is, why are they standing there? They are vulnerable, they have produced. Why are they not selling? And I made a mental note that I want to make a change. But I knew the change that I wanted to make, I could not make myself. So I set up on a journey to create networks, to find friends, to influence governments and universities to be able to make a change. And so we have come up with a product that not only does the solution of post-harvest handling and reduction of losses on sweet potatoes in the western part of Kenya, but we can now produce sweet potatoes into different products that are healthy for all consumer markets, young and old. We have done a few customer palatability testing, pricing, and we're in the process where we have done prototypes and we are ready to go into full-scale manufacturing. This is going to create initially 2,000 jobs. where the women producers are also integrated, not just as farmers, but in the supply chain as workers. It's going to provide employment as well as opportunities for certain sustainable income for smallholder farmers, not just in Kenya, but in the region of East Africa and expanding to Africa as a whole. Sweet potato is a product that is very resistant to climate change. It grows in sub-Saharan Africa, and so it's a solution, not just to food security in sub-Saharan Africa, but to provide sustainable income for the poor farming communities. For me, this is an opportunity to be able to stand before you and see the passion and feel it as I did, and join me, either by investing in the business, providing your mentoring support, or just coming in with your technology and advice and mentoring so that we can make a change together. But when I came here this morning, or this afternoon, I got an invitation. And in my invitation, it said, the Duke of New York invites you to the palace. And I got an email again to say, the Duke is really looking forward to see you. And I did the African way that when you're invited, especially to the palace, you don't just walk barehanded. So I brought a present for the Duke. So this is part of the journey that I have taken, because I needed to demonstrate to the farmers and to the people that sweet potatoes is not a poor man's food. And out of that aggressive presentation at the pitch of Palace, we got to be appointed as some of the most talented African entrepreneurs to be able to drive African innovation and development. I'm standing here today before you, not just as Kenyans, but also as an African that is desiring to see the change that Africa can make, especially when it comes to food security and supplying the growing global market. So what we have done with sweet potatoes are several things that I want to be able to share with you today, if I can just get my slide to work. This is a story that we've just been seeing. This is a story that I did when I first went to get a supermarket to be able to supply the sweet potato products from Kabondo. And the basic thing, or the most important thing I want you to learn from my experience here, is that a lot of the crops that we see around in the farms or by the roadside are not ready for export. So I took a big challenge and took a 120,000 lease, 220,000 pounds, translate that into Kenya shillings, with the desire to be able to sell the Kenya sweet potatoes, because I wanted to be a solution. That is our standard Spitalfield market, selling 120 tons of products every day. But I stand here today, it was not possible, because one, some of my colleagues spoke today about logistics. It takes 3 days to get Kenyan produce into the UK. 3 days, this is a stock market exchange. Prices change every second and every hour. Packaging, as you can see there, that's one of the packaging. Logistics, onward transport to retailers and distributors from the source of import, a very important part. So these are some of the issues that I want to take you through today in the very short time that I have. So as part of mentoring, which is good, I just want to mention that the products that we have developed have actually won an award for food innovation. And so it's not a small thing that we've been able to do for the Kenyan sweet potatoes. We've started by training the farmers on good agricultural practices, investing heavily in quality control system, HACCP, ISO certification, and most importantly, phytosanitary systems, which is the core of export and promotion into the global marketplace. Export does not start by looking or exporting into the market. How have you grown your crops and who is growing it? Research. I am a great believer and a passionate believer, and I'm sure those of you who know me here know that I believe in building capability. It's important that if you're going to export and work with people, that their ability is built. Knowledge transfer is what I have worked with all of the UK universities on researching How can we use sweet potatoes as an ingredient? It's no point thinking of just flying fresh roots of sweet potatoes across with all the issues with freshness, long shelf life. So a lot of research and development I have done on that. And we've come up with several products that we have developed, which I want to show you. A lot of consumer research on palatability testing. If we are going to supply sweet potatoes to the global marketplace, how does it taste to the people? This is the research that we need to do in the market before we try to export anything to the market. Viscosity. How does the product flow and swallow into people's? And most importantly, what is the price that we are going to supply this product in? Packaging issue is one of them. We've done all over European countries, we've done Canada, and we've done Australia and many countries. So these are some of the products that we have had. Very innovative, premium products out of sweet potatoes. We have creme brulee. This is a premium dessert that we have made out of sweet potatoes. We have done snack bars, and tomorrow, those of you here, you'll have the opportunity to taste some of the snack bars. We've done several Indian foods that are very specific to the Indian community. But most importantly, we've also done pancake mixes and sweet potato soups, fortified by ingredients. So part of what we had today is how do we use ingredients? Food innovation is not about cooking and chefing. It's about using ingredients to develop new products for the international market. And this is what we have done with sweet potatoes. So there's a lot to share with you, but I think before I close, and I can see Julie is really on my back here, is some of the researches that we have done. What does the global market want? Where is the market for us? When we are looking at how in the next 30 years, the world population is going to be made out of 50 people who are over 50 years. What is the requirement of these people? High requirement for protein. That is the global population in 2050. So how are we developing our export market to fit in to supply this kind of age group? So there's so much to share with you, but I don't want to run over time. And I want to be able to be here next to tomorrow to give you more information about what we have done in terms of the Big Four agenda and how we can use sweet potato as an ingredient for large-scale manufacturing so that the social impact that we desire can be created. Julie, I am so sorry I have...
No, I was actually enjoying it. Do you feel inspired? I am so, let's give her another round of applause because that's not easy. That is not easy, that's incredible. And I watch in London, in DC and other places, the fast food restaurants shutting down and healthy cafes starting up. And then I watch here in Nairobi, in Africa, the fast food restaurants that are shutting down all over the world are doing what? They're opening here. Some of them even import their chips, right? So they don't even use local potato, right? What are we doing? And you refer to the fact that we call the sweet potato the poor man's food. How shameless of us. It's far more nutritious than many other things that we eat, right? So fascinating. I think I'll just mention that as we are looking at the world highlighting superfoods like quinoa, goji beans, chia seeds. By the way, did you know seaweed is now identified as a superfood? How many of you knew? Seaweed is a superfood. And we have lots of seaweed in Kenya. But we also have amaranth. And we have not yet positioned amaranth as a global superfood, and we must. So identifying some of the key things we must do. Thank you so much, Paris, for that. Next, we're going to hear more about the Make It Kenya. Amaris Ngugi to come up, acting CEO of the Brand Kenya Board. Let's give her a round of applause, please. Thank you.
Okay, our CS, PS, CEOs, and distinguished ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. Damaris Ngugi from Brand Kenya Board. I'm going to take you through the Made in Kenya mark that we've talked about. Now, you'll note something today that most people that have come here to talk, they've talked about competitiveness, they've talked about innovation, they've talked about brand proposition, they've talked about preference for Kenyan products. Now, all these cannot be achieved if our products continue being exported or even continue being sold locally and internationally without a mark, because no one will tell that this is a Kenyan product. How many of us, for example, have gone to a shop, a supermarket somewhere outside the country, seen a product, it looks like it's Kenyan, but you wouldn't tell that it's actually Kenyan? I'm sure many of us have done that. And that is why, as Brand Kenya, we manage the image and reputation of the country. And that is why we sat together and realized that our Kenyan products need to be known as Kenyan products. And how can that be done? Now, this can only be done if we can be able to recognize the Kenyan product. And that is the reason why we have the Made in Kenya identity mark. Now, this Made in Kenya identity mark was developed through stakeholders consultation. So we have KEBS, we have KEPSA, and so many other stakeholders. They came up together and realized that this mark cannot work if only Brand Kenya thought about it. So they have their input in the mark. And maybe as we move on, sorry. Okay, so this is what we are talking about, the Made in. The Made in Kenya is all about having Kenyan products being distinguished as Kenyan product. So you'll see from this PowerPoint presentation that Made in is a term that is used to describe where products originate from. So Kenyan products that originate from Kenya will from now be known as products that originate from Kenya, because they will go out or they will even be sold in our supermarket with the mark in them. You'll also note that it will become easy to identify and distinguish the Kenyan products, the services, and the concept when we have the Made in mark on those particular products. Now, the other advantage of this is the objectives of this mark. Now, one of the objectives of this mark is that it will enable us to both locally and abroad identify a Kenyan product. Just like we were saying, if we talked about the French beans, for example, we would like to call them the Kenyan beans. Now, if we call them Kenyan beans, and people have for a long time known them as French beans, how would we tell then that they are Kenyan beans? With the Made in mark, then they can be known outside there as Made in Kenya products. And a Kenyan in the diaspora can tell this is a product that is coming from my home country, and then they can be proud about that particular product. The other advantage or objective is that it will create a strong brand proposition. It will give you as manufacturers, for example, an opportunity to sell your products, to push your products outside there and even inside in Kenya, so that they can be known as Kenyan products. One other thing you'll note with most of the speakers today is that we've said that Kenyans are known for innovation, we are known for creativity. We come up with very good ideas, but sometimes some of these ideas get lost along the way because they are never known where they originated from. So other people will pick your ideas and use them for their own good. But now with the Made in Kenya mark, then it will be easy for your products to be known. The other advantage is that it will enhance competitiveness. It is easy to compete globally and also locally because your products will have a mark in them. And this mark will ensure that Kenyans can be proud. Somebody asked, Julie asked in the morning, how many of us consumed Kenyan products this morning? Maybe many of us did, but how many of us know that they actually consumed Kenyan products? You wouldn't tell because they do not have a mark in them. But now with the Made in Kenya mark, you will be able to tell that this is actually a Kenyan product. And you know Kenyans are usually very proud about their product, so it will be an opportunity for us Kenyans also to be proud of our very own product. The other advantage is that it will strengthen Kenya's position as a made-in country. That means that Kenya has products that they make. But in most cases, this product gets outside there without being known that they are actually Kenyan products. And that is why you'll walk along the alleys of supermarkets but never get to know that a product is actually a Kenyan product. But once it's marked, then it will mean that now you can tell it's actually a Kenyan product, and that becomes an advantage for Kenya as a country. The other advantage is that it will give you as a manufacturer an opportunity to sell your product. Remember, the PPADA Act 2015 says that products that are locally made have the advantage of being sold, or rather they have procurement advantages. So once you have a product with the made in mark, it means that your product can easily sell through in the Kenyan market without having to go through a lot of bureaucratic, you don't need to go through a lot of so an advantage. So it's a good opportunity for the manufacturers to actually take in this made in Kenya mark so that their products can sell. Now, this mark was made with a lot of it evokes a lot of emotion in it. Why do I say that? I say that because if you look at this mark, you will note a few things that are very common or that are very familiar. To start with, you will note the colors. These are the Kenyan flag colors. The other thing you will note about it is that it has our country, made in Kenya. It has the name of our country. So it evokes emotional ties to our country, and it will be easier to identify the Kenyan product. So if you look at it, each one of the circles or maybe the dots says something about the Kenyan product. For example, if you look at the very inner circle that is green, it represents the one voice. It says that Kenyans are able to speak in one voice, which is an advantage for us. Then the second dot, the small brown dots around the central sphere, they stand for the land, and they represent all the 47 counties in Kenya. And then we have the black bars that represent the color of the people of Kenya. And then we also have the red circle that stands for our passion and pride. And then with it you will note that it has some golden arrows. Now the golden arrows shows us pushing forward as a country. We are pushing out towards one direction, trying to ensure that we earn export opportunities, that we are able to sell our products even locally. And then we have the small dots that are around the sphere that are in two colors. They represent the male and female. So we have all of them going around the circle. And then from there, the whole circle shows the culture and heritage of Kenya. So like I said at the beginning, the colors are very familiar. They represent the Kenyan flag. Now, what are the benefits of acquiring this mark? Now, one of the benefits of acquiring this mark is, like I said at the beginning, getting procurement opportunities. And this is in line with the law. It is not just something that we are talking about. It's in line with the PPADA Act 2015. So it will give you, as a manufacturer, an opportunity to sell your products. The other advantage of having this is that we will have you, or your company will be on our microsite, and that way we will promote that on the Brand Kenya microsite, and we can be able to promote your products as authentic Kenyan products. That will also be an advantage. So from tomorrow, when this is launched, you'll be able to go to the Brand Kenya website. That is www.brandkenya.go.ke, then /made in Kenya, and you can be able to apply for this. This is being done together with KEBS and other stakeholders. Then the other benefit of acquiring this mark is that you can access the campaign's branding toolkit, which again Brand Kenya will be organizing, so that becomes a big advantage for the manufacturers. And then finally, you can at least enter the international market and access priority. Now, the criteria for getting the mark of identity is, one, ownership. At least 51% of the shareholding must be local shareholding. this will be an advantage for Kenyans. So it means that it's not for any company. It must be for at least a company that is at half of the shareholders are Kenyans. The other thing that we'll be looking at is at the employment. At least it should be able to employ 50% of Kenyans. And then compliance, it must comply with the tax laws, it must comply with it must have registration certificates with it, the company should not be insolvent, and then the company should not have been debarred from public procurement. Then about the product, the advantage of the product is that the product must bear the KEBS S mark, and that will be one of the criteria that will be used to check if your product can also get the Made in Kenya mark. And then finally, the raw materials must be Kenyan raw materials. At least 40% must be produced locally. That will also give you an opportunity again to sell your products. Now, the placement of this Made in Kenya, this is the way the Made in Kenya mark will be placed. So you can see, like somebody was talking about what we find on Gong Road. There are a lot of, there is good furniture, but it gets sold sometimes in our shop. So we have it on flowers, we have it on our kikois, which I think most of us, I think the kikoi especially, we even lost it to who will apply for this. You'll go through the website, as I had earlier mentioned. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let's give her another round of applause. I hope for companies this is an exciting opportunity and that you will apply. We are going to break for lunch now. Can I ask the VIPs, you will exit the room and then head out and to the left. For everybody else as well, you'll be guided to our lunch area. Can I ask if there was a video that was to be played? We can play that now as we exit for lunch. Thank you very much. We shall see you in the afternoon. Have an excellent lunch. Thank you. Asanteni.
Every country that wants to show great success with its industry, with its productivity, with its products, always has a great mark of identity.
The Made in Kenya identity mark is an idea whose time has come. As a country, I think we've been perceiving imported products to be superior to local products. The Made in Kenya mark gives us an opportunity to take pride in the products that are locally available. First of all, it's an identifier that assists us to identify the products that are made locally. And in addition to that, it differentiates our products from other products, both on the shelf locally and in the international market.
The Made in Kenya mark will do this selling.
In the international markets, we have many brands and we know their source. But the source of Kenyan brands get lost in the failure to clearly mark and identify them as products made out of Kenya. So I'm very passionate in the agenda around branding Kenyan products.
It is imperative that all of us take great pride in our products. And the way to take great pride is to put our name on that product.
I think it's an excellent idea because coming out of the country, or even for local consumption, we are not quite able to identify what is local and what is not, unless somebody who's in manufacturing actually took the time out to brand their product as made in Kenya. But there's no mark that identifies that this product is from Kenya.
We have pride in it. So it gives us pride on our products. It gives us an identity, both locally and internationally. So it's something that I think is excellent, and it's a long time coming.
Well, we love the Kenya identification mark today because it's creative, original, and stands for integrity. And this particular mark is very special to the Kenyan market because it's a Kenyan product made from high-quality Kenyan ingredients, and the greatness of the people contributing to produce such wonderful brands and then be able to have high quality of products that gives a very special experiences, not only in Kenya, but the rest of Africa.
If you manufacture, if you make anything here with your hands, have that mark so that you identify with the rest of the manufacturers. It's important that we go as a group to the world and say, look, we are here. So of course, I support the adoption of the mark 100% on Kenyan-made products.
And when you put your mark of identity, you send a signal to the world that this product is coming from the best hands, from the best minds, from the best manufacturing capability on the continent of Africa.
I would like to go out there and buy coffee and say, and I see it's written made in Kenya. You know, it's really a proud moment for as a country when you can buy products that have a mark of your own country.
It's a huge pride for us to be associated and come together so that all of us, whether we are state agencies or private sector, promote the Kenyan brand, which is made in Kenya.
The mark of identity for Kenya is the mark of a true country that looks for great prosperity and for great products.
I encourage us all to buy Kenya and build Kenya.
Buy Kenya, build Kenya.
My name is Rita Kavashi.
Buy Kenya, build Kenya.
And I say, buy Kenya, build Kenya. Every country that wants to show great success with its industry, with its productivity, with its products, always has a great mark of identity.
The Made in Kenya